All right. Hi, everybody. Please forgive the poor technical expertise on this video, but I wanted to try to make some suggestions and recommendations on how to take this course. So here we are at the beginning of Canvas. Now, the way the system is set up in Canvas, that you have modules lined up beginning at the home page, and you can see the quick start. This is start here. That's the only place where they really tell you where the beginning, middle, or end might be. So it's always a good idea to go through and take a look at the various boilerplate information that's included, accommodation states, Title IX. So the syllabus and acknowledgement assignment is in here. This assignment is mainly designed to test your ability to upload a file and sign it and utilize the technology that's involved with Canvas. Underneath required texts, you can see that the link to the iBook text is included here. And so I would recommend that you use the browser version. Is usually the best way of going about downloading this text through your iTunes U account. And this gives you takes you to the iTunes U. Unfortunately, I'm getting an error signal, which is I understand is kind of a common occurrence. Even though I have iTunes U and the proper iOS on this. So all I can say is sorry about that. All right. So let me take you back to the more relevant ways that I would go about working on this course. All right. Underneath assignments, for example, you can see that you've got four main steps in this course. This is the second writing intensive course that you have to take in the core curriculum here. And so you have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. In this particular course, what I've done is design all of the steps are related to the final research process, which is basically an exploration of a fairy tale of your own choosing. One that, I don't know, is some favorite of yours. You know, it could be Cinderella, it could be Rumpelstiltskin, could be Iron John, it could be any number of Little Red Riding Hood, favorite of mine. But basically, the idea is to do some research. Typical traditional research in the humanities considers texts from a number of different scholarly perspectives, be they historical, social, cultural, using a kind of critical analysis to look at the literature, to sort of understand how did the audience of the time use this literature, what was its purposes. And so in this course we're looking at it, there are themes that are involved. Ethics, for example, is one of the major themes of the course, and certainly you'll find that this fairy tales are filled with ethical stories, stories about morality and kind of the ideals of ethical behavior. And they're also very contradictory too, and so you'll find, you know, that in today's day and age, our ethical ideals seem to vary somewhat from these old stories. But nonetheless, we continue to tell these stories. So I'm asking you, why? You know, what is still important about these stories? How do they shape our thinking about what it means to be a little boy or a little girl, and what those consequences have on being young men and women as well? And so, for example, the first research process step asks you to go ahead and find a fairy tale that you'd like to research, and I've given you some links here to take a look at from Carnegie Mellon University, University of Pittsburgh. I'm not sure HCA's, but they've got a nice set of readings there. And then I've asked you to think about the story from a scholarly perspective, either from a psychological or historical, or even from a marketing perspective, right? And you'll find various academic articles that sort of look at these particular stories. You'll be surprised. And so I've given you some examples that relate to these different sort of disciplinary perspectives and that you might find very interesting. And then this first step asks to write a paper that synthesizes those sources, the original fairy tale and the critical article that you've read. And so this is a relatively short exercise. Now here I'm recommending 4 to 5 pages, but I'm more interested in the quality of your work, the research that you do. And so I've given you a typical organization, for this assignment. Now this particular assignment is due, let's go back and take a look at the due dates. Research assignment is due on April 23rd, so we've got some time for this. All right, so let's take a look at the first assignment that's going to come due, which is underneath discussions. All right, and so I've asked you to take some time to consider and follow, what does the origin of the universe imply in terms of meaning or purpose. You may be raised, for example, in an atheistic household, might suggest that there's really no purpose to the universe. It seems like it's most likely a chance creation in itself, probabilities of matter and energy and so forth, and all kind of scientific sorts of ways of thinking about this. And so perhaps the origin doesn't necessarily imply meaning. Perhaps existence in our time here, in this particular chance or probability, there is some purpose or meaning that can be drawn out of what we make of this chance that we have, right? The probability that we've occurred in this world, right? And so there are various ways of sort of thinking about this idea of the beginnings of the world and the universe that continue to sort of affect our understanding of what it's all about, right? And so that's what this discussion is sort of opening up. Now the larger discussion that's going to be taking place in the class this semester. And so I've mentioned here that I think that pictures and images are especially important when writing online. So it's really important that you use the browser version so you get access to the editing toolbar so that you can capture media and embed those in your discussions. And I've asked you to also to maintain some of the conventions of writing online. If you add a link, discuss what that's about. You might link something within your own discussion. And so that will, and I would encourage you to read each other's discussions. Now the way I've set it up is that you don't get to see the discussions until you've posted something. But let me show you how I'll be grading those. And the rubric you can find by looking under the grade tab in your assignments. You've got submission, something else, edit, and grades. And when you click grades, you'll see this rubric, right? And so the rubric has 4 categories: complete address of the writing prompt. And so the best you can do is 25 points in this, and that's completely and thoroughly addressing each one of the questions that I've asked, providing examples and evidence supporting from the readings. Now the first writing prompt, there's no reading necessarily attached to it, although you can take a look at the introduction to the iBook, and that gives you an idea of sort of where we're coming from in this course, and that might be helpful. The second is to, before I go, as far as the form of responding to the discussions and to these questions, I'm perfectly happy to have you copy out the questions and then just write your responses directly below those. That way you know you've responded to each one of the questions, and that's fine with me. The second thing I'd like for you to do is to go beyond the iBook, to look at definitions of terms or find connections to things that you actually find that are interesting. Perhaps, the whole idea of universal connections and stuff like this sort of leads you back to things about black holes and alternate universes. Add it, all right? It's what's important to you or find interesting in doing the work and responding to these assignments. That's what I'd like to see in your writing. And I think that's what other people, as they read your writing also, may click on and find interesting to look at too. The third criteria is personal connection. And this is talking about kind of a connection that you make as you go along. And that's why I say, that the work that you do on looking at the research looking at the readings themselves. Sometimes you have a personal connection, sometimes you don't really have. Maybe you're reading Kant, an essay on Kant or an essay on Hume, and you're thinking, what do I have to do with this old dead white guy? Nothing. But maybe you do have something to do with the topic of miracles, right? That has some resonance in your life, and you have a personal connection there. Or maybe the Kant's categorical imperative sort of rings true to you, that it seems like there should be some absolute ways of defining, what is a moral and ethical action, right? And you sort of wish that there was some way of measuring, ethical behavior, right? In the way that kind of Kant suggests that you could by, measuring it against this rule that he has, all right? And so that's what I'm looking for in terms of the personal connection. So it relates sort of your battle and struggle with dealing with the material of the course. And then finally, grammar and mechanics. Now I understand that some of you English is a second language. So all I'm suggesting to you is that this is a chance to practice your English writing skills. If English is your first language, this, I would suggest to you, is an opportunity for you to practice your English writing skills, all right? And now, please, I'm only interested in your writing, and I'm only going to comment on your writing. If you use sources, direct a language from another source, from the book or what have you, and use that specific language, put quotes around it, and then add the little APA citation down at the bottom of your discussion. If you're summarizing or paraphrasing somebody else's idea that you've discovered online, go ahead and cite that as well. Don't worry too much about the form. The more you write, the better your writing becomes, and so that's what I'm looking for there. But don't just copy and paste things in. That will get you in terrible trouble, and especially if you neglect to cite, the source for it, because then it will seem as if you've just plagiarized someone else's work, and you don't want to do that. And so that's I hope that's helpful in getting started. I would just use the discussion and assignments pages, to kind of direct your attention to the specific readings that need to be done. All right, and hopefully that will get you started. Please, this is the longest video I'm going to ever make in this course. I hope to God. In between now and then, I'll continue to post up responses and give you some general feedback every week. I'll be writing in response to your discussions, and so you'll be getting feedback from me constantly that way. And then once a week, I'll submit a video kind of like this to give some general sort of recommendations and some encouragement, all right? Hope you have a fun time taking the course, and please send me emails, any questions that you might have. Great. Talk to you soon. Bye.